Los Angeles, California. 1991. In the hills of Holmby, where the ultra-wealthy hide from the world, construction begins on a house that will become legendary for all the wrong reasons. 56,500 square feet. 123 rooms. A bowling alley. A skating rink. A room just for wrapping gifts. Built by a man who'd never lived anywhere this large. For a family that would be destroyed by it. This is Spelling Manor, known to the world as the Manor. And this is its dark story. From the outside, it looks like a French chateau accidentally dropped into Southern California. Limestone and mansard roofs and formal gardens that require 35 full-time gardeners. But this isn't a palace built by old money over generations. This is new money, television money, built in a frenzy by a man racing against time. A man who knew he was dying and needed to build something that would last forever. Aaron Spelling was the most successful producer in television history. Charlie's Angels, Dynasty, Beverly Hills 90210, Melrose Place. He created the shows that defined American television for 3 decades. But the Manor, his final greatest production, would become his curse. Because this house wasn't built for living. It was built as a monument. A fortress. A mausoleum for a man who was already dying when construction began. And from the moment the family moved in, everything went wrong. Relationships collapsed. Health deteriorated. The famous daughter fled and never came back. The widow locked herself inside for decades. And the son, the heir to this palace, watched his inheritance become a prison he couldn't escape. The story of Spelling Manor isn't about ghosts. It's about wealth so extreme it becomes toxic. About a house so large it destroys the people who live in it. About luxury that isolates rather than comforts. And about the question nobody wants to ask, at what point does more become too much? This house cost $47 million to build in 1991, over $100 million today. It has a room for every day of the year. It employed Los Angeles, California. 1991. In the hills of Holmby, where the ultra-wealthy hide from the world, construction begins on a house that will become legendary for all the wrong reasons. 56,500 square feet. 123 rooms. A bowling alley. A skating rink. A room just for wrapping gifts. Built by a man who'd never lived anywhere this large. For a family that would be destroyed by it. This is Spelling Manor, known to the world as the Manor. And this is its dark story. From the outside, it looks like a French chateau accidentally dropped into Southern California. Limestone and mansard roofs and formal gardens that require 35 full-time gardeners. But this isn't a palace built by old money over generations. This is new money, television money, built in a frenzy by a man racing against time. A man who knew he was dying and needed to build something that would last forever. Aaron Spelling was the most successful producer in television history. Charlie's Angels, Dynasty, Beverly Hills 90210, Melrose Place. He created the shows that defined American television for 3 decades. But the Manor, his final greatest production, would become his curse. Because this house wasn't built for living. It was built as a monument. A fortress. A mausoleum for a man who was already dying when construction began. And from the moment the family moved in, everything went wrong. Relationships collapsed. Health deteriorated. The famous daughter fled and never came back. The widow locked herself inside for decades. And the son, the heir to this palace, watched his inheritance become a prison he couldn't escape. The story of Spelling Manor isn't about ghosts. It's about wealth so extreme it becomes toxic. About a house so large it destroys the people who live in it. About luxury that isolates rather than comforts. And about the question nobody wants to ask, at what point does more become too much? This house cost $47 million to build in 1991, over $100 million today. It has a room for every day of the year. It employed 25 full-time staff just to keep it running. And it made everyone who lived there miserable. The question isn't whether the manor is cursed. The question is, what happens to human beings when they try to inhabit spaces designed for display rather than life? What happens when you build a monument to yourself and then have to live inside it? Aaron Spelling died in the house in 2006, isolated in a bedroom suite larger than most people's homes. His widow, Candy, lived there alone for another 13 years, rattling around in 56,000 square feet with only servants for company. The house was sold in 2019 for $120 million to a British heiress. She's attempting to live there now. Good luck. If you enjoy deep investigations into the psychology of extreme wealth and the architecture that enables it, please like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments which mansion we should explore next. Your support makes these detailed stories possible. Let's begin. Chapter 1. The Producer Who Conquered Television. Aaron Spelling wasn't born wealthy. He was born in Dallas, Texas in 1923 to Jewish immigrant parents who struggled financially through the Depression. His childhood was marked by poverty and anti-Semitic bullying. He was beaten regularly at school. He developed psychosomatic symptoms. He was bedridden for a year as a teenager, doctors finding no physical cause for his illness. The bedroom became his escape. Radio dramas. Books. Imagination. Aaron learned to create worlds in his head, stories where he controlled the outcomes, where good prevailed, where everything was beautiful. This would define his career. After serving in World War II, Aaron moved to Los Angeles with dreams of becoming an actor. He had minor success, small television roles, nothing significant. But he understood something that other struggling actors didn't. The real power was behind the camera. In the 1960s, Aaron transitioned to producing. He had an instinct for what audiences wanted: glamour, conflict, beautiful people in beautiful settings, clear villains and heroes, problems that resolved in 60 minutes. He created the Mod Squad in 1968, a hit. Then he met Douglas Kramer, and they formed a production company. The hits multiplied: The Rookies, SWAT, Starsky and Hutch, Family. But Aaron's breakthrough came in 1976 with Charlie's Angels. 3 beautiful women fighting crime in glamorous Los Angeles. The formula was simple: beautiful people, exotic locations, straightforward plots, aspirational lifestyles. It was a massive hit. And Aaron understood why. People wanted escape. They wanted to see lives more exciting, more beautiful, more glamorous than their own. He doubled down on this formula. Dynasty 1981 took it further: wealthy families, power struggles, shoulder pads and jewels, oil money and betrayal. It became one of the most watched shows of the 1980s. Beverly Hills 90210, 1990, defined a generation: attractive teenagers navigating high school in the wealthiest zip code in America. Melrose Place 1992, beautiful 20-somethings in an LA apartment complex, navigating careers and relationships and backstabbing. Seventh Heaven 1996, even his wholesome family drama was aspirational, following a minister's picture-perfect family. Aaron Spelling became the most prolific producer in television history. At his peak in the 1990s, he had multiple shows on air simultaneously, producing over 200 episodes per year. He understood the formula: give people beautiful fantasies. Show them lives they'll never have. Make them believe that somewhere, someone is living the dream. And Aaron was living it too. The television money was staggering. Hundreds of millions of dollars. More wealth than he could spend. But Aaron Spelling, the poor kid from Dallas who'd been beaten for being Jewish, who'd spent a year bedridden, who'd struggled as an actor, Aaron never forgot poverty. Never forgot vulnerability. He channeled that fear into building. If he built something large enough, solid enough, expensive enough, he'd finally be safe. In 1983, Aaron and his wife Candy purchased a property in Holmby Hills, one of Los Angeles's most exclusive neighborhoods, where neighbors included the Playboy Mansion and the homes of old Hollywood royalty. The property contained a house built in the 1930s, a modest, by billionaire standards, mansion on 6 acres. Aaron and Candy lived there for 8 years. But it wasn't enough. The house was old. It had history. Bing Crosby had owned it previously. But it wasn't Aaron's. It was someone else's home that he'd purchased. Aaron wanted to build his own. Something that would stand for centuries. Something that would prove to the world, to himself, that the poor Jewish kid from Dallas had not just survived, but conquered. In 1988, Aaron was diagnosed with oral cancer. The prognosis was uncertain. He underwent treatment, surgery, radiation, and survived. But the diagnosis changed him. He became obsessed with legacy. He needed to create something permanent. Something that would outlast him. Television shows end. Reruns fade. Even Dynasty and 90210 would eventually become dated relics. But a house, a truly great house, could stand for centuries. In 1988, Aaron made a decision that would define the rest of his life and his family's future. He would tear down the Bing Crosby mansion and build the largest house in Los Angeles County. He hired architect James Langenheim. He gave him unlimited budget and one instruction: make it the best. Make it bigger than anything else. Make it last forever. Construction began in 1991. The project would take 5 years, cost over $47 million, and create a monument that nobody, not even the Spelling family, knew how to live in. Chapter 2: Building the Unbuildable. The plans for Spelling Manor were audacious. 56,500 square feet of living space, making it the largest single-family home in Los Angeles County. For comparison, the White House is 55,000 square feet. Aaron Spelling was building a private residence larger than the president's house. But the square footage alone doesn't capture the excess. It's the details. 123 rooms including 14 bedrooms, 27 bathrooms, multiple kitchens, a formal kitchen, a catering kitchen, a kosher kitchen, a library, a wine cellar. It could hold 10,000 bottles, but Aaron didn't drink. A bowling alley. Aaron didn't bowl. A skating rink. No one in the family skated. A screening room seating 50. A gym, multiple offices. A room specifically designed for wrapping gifts. A room specifically for storing Silvera. Room for Candy's doll collection, containing over 400 dolls. A humidity-controlled room for furs. An entire wing. 4 staff quarters. The house wasn't designed for living. It was designed for every possible activity a wealthy person might theoretically want to do, whether the Spelling family actually did those things or not. The architecture is French chateau meets Los Angeles excess. Mansard roofs. Limestone imported from France. Formal gardens modeled after Versailles. A motor court that can accommodate 100 cars. But beneath the European aesthetics, this is a fundamentally American house. It's about more. Bigger. The most. It's designed to impress, to overwhelm, to make every visitor understand. The person who lives here has won. Construction was a nightmare. The project required 400-plus construction workers at peak, 5 years to complete. Original estimate was 3. Complete demolition of the previous house and extensive excavation, installation of systems that had never been used in a private residence. Industrial HVAC, commercial kitchen equipment, museum-grade climate control. The house was being built during the 1992 Los Angeles riots. Construction stopped for a week as the city burned. Aaron hired private security to protect the site. He was terrified that his unfinished monument would be destroyed. The project went massively over budget. The original estimate was $35 million. Final cost exceeded $47 million, over $100 million in today's dollars. But Aaron didn't care about cost. He cared about legacy. Neighbors complained. The construction noise was constant for 5 years. The truck traffic disrupted the quiet neighborhood. The house itself, rising higher and larger than anything around it, was seen as an eyesore. Too big, too ostentatious, too new money gauche for old money Holmby Hills. Aaron and Candy's daughter Tori was a teenager during construction. She later wrote about watching the house grow, feeling increasingly uncomfortable with its scale. It wasn't a home, she said in interviews years later. It was a hotel. Or a museum. It was a place designed to show off, not to live. The son, Randy, was in his early 20s. He'd already struggled with his identity as Aaron Spelling's son, the expectation that he'd follow his father into entertainment, the weight of the Spelling name. The house made it worse. It was a physical manifestation of Aaron's success, something Randy could never match. How do you live up to a father who built the biggest house in LA? Candy Spelling oversaw interior design. She had unlimited budget and specific vision. Everything should be perfect. The best materials. The finest furniture. Every detail considered. But perfect is cold. The house was decorated like a magazine spread or a luxury hotel lobby. Beautiful objects arranged in beautiful rooms. But no personality. No warmth. No sense that human beings actually lived there. The manor was completed in 1991. The Spelling family moved in. And immediately, things started going wrong. Chapter 3: The Family That Fractured. The Spelling family moved into the manor in 1991, Aaron 68, Candy 45, Tori 18, and Randy 32. Within 5 years, the family would be destroyed. Not by external forces. Not by scandal or financial collapse. But by the house itself, by what it represented and what it required. The staff problem. The manor required 25 full-time staff just to maintain housekeepers, gardeners, maintenance workers, chefs, security, personal assistants. This meant there were always people in the house. Always someone vacuuming, polishing, gardening, cooking, watching. Privacy didn't exist. The family was never truly alone. Tori described it in her memoir. I'd wake up and there would be someone making my bed while I was still in it. I'd go to the kitchen for a snack and a chef would appear to make it for me. I couldn't do anything myself. Everything was done by staff. This sounds like luxury. But psychologically, it's destabilizing. You can't relax in your own home when there are always employees present. You can't be yourself. You're always performing the role of the family that lives in the manor. Randy had similar experiences. He later told interviewers that he felt like a guest in his own home, like the house belonged to the staff more than to the family. The scale problem. 56,500 square feet is too large for human habitation. That's not opinion, it's spatial psychology. Research shows that people need defined, manageable spaces to feel comfortable. Homes that are too large create anxiety and isolation. Family members can go days without seeing each other. You get lost. Spaces go unused and become depressing reminders of waste. The Spelling family lived in about 5,000 square feet of the manor, a master suite, a few family rooms, the kitchen. The other 51,000 square feet was rarely used. Entire wings sat empty. The bowling alley was used maybe 5 times. The skating rink never. The gift wrapping room was absurd, a whole room dedicated to a task that takes up a corner of a table in normal homes. The unused spaces became oppressive. Walking through empty, perfectly decorated rooms that no one ever entered. It felt like living in a museum after hours. Beautiful. Dead. Tori described feeling lonely despite living with family. The house was so large that she could go a whole day without seeing her parents or brother. They'd retreat to their own wings. They'd use intercoms to communicate rather than walk to find each other. The manor didn't bring the family together. It pushed them apart. The expectations problem. Living in the largest house in LA came with social expectations. The Spellings were expected to entertain, to host parties, dinners, charity events. Candy threw elaborate events. She was a skilled hostess. But the events were performances, not gatherings. Everything had to be perfect. The right guests, the right caterers, the right flowers. Aaron hated it. He was shy, uncomfortable in large social settings. He built the house to prove his success, but now success required him to constantly perform that success for others. After parties, Aaron would retreat to his bedroom suite and not emerge for days. Candy would handle the social obligations alone. The marriage, which had survived 30 years before the manor, began to fracture under the weight of the house. Tori's escape. Tori Spelling left the manor as soon as possible. She moved out in her early 20s, choosing a modest apartment over continued life in the mansion. Her relationship with her mother deteriorated. Candy wanted Tori to embrace the Spelling lifestyle, to understand that the house, the wealth, the status were hard-won and should be appreciated. Tori saw it differently. The house was a prison. It was excess that served no purpose. It was her father's monument to his own insecurity, and she wanted nothing to do with it. Tori's departure was a rebellion. She chose a normal life, eventually marrying an actor, Dean McDermott, who was not wealthy, having children, living in regular houses. She wrote memoirs that criticized the Spelling lifestyle. She spoke publicly about growing up in the manor feeling isolated and unhappy. Candy was devastated. She saw Tori's rejection as a personal betrayal. How dare she criticize the luxury that Aaron had worked so hard to provide? The mother-daughter relationship collapsed. They barely spoke for years. Randy's dissolution. Randy Spelling's story is sadder. While Tori escaped, Randy stayed, physically and psychologically trapped by the family legacy. Randy had never found his path. He'd tried acting, minor success, producing, overshadowed by Aaron, business ventures, failures. Nothing worked. He was Aaron Spelling's son. That was his identity. And it was crushing. After Tori left, Randy lived at the manor with Aaron and Candy. He was in his 30s, a grown man, living with his parents in a 56,000 square foot house. He described feeling like a child. The staff treated him like Aaron's son, not as an adult. His mother hovered. His father, increasingly unwell, needed care. Randy struggled with depression. He gained weight. He withdrew socially. He lived in one wing of the manor, rarely leaving, rarely interacting even with his parents who lived in other wings. The house enabled his isolation. In a normal-sized home, family members interact by necessity. You share kitchens, living rooms, bathrooms. You can't hide. In the manor, you could disappear. Randy disappeared. Aaron's decline. Aaron's health deteriorated steadily through the 1990s and early 2000s. The cancer had been treated, but his body was breaking down. Heart problems. Stroke. Progressive weakness. He spent more time in his bedroom suite, a multi-room complex within the manor that included a bedroom, sitting room, office, and full bathroom larger than most apartments. He worked from bed, still producing television shows, still involved in Hollywood, but increasingly isolated, increasingly frail. The house he'd built to be his legacy became his tomb. He rarely left. Couldn't leave. The scale of the place, the stairs, the distances made mobility difficult. Near the end, Aaron lived essentially in one room. The 56,499 other square feet of his monument went unused by him. He died on June 23, 2006, in his bedroom at the manor. He was 83 years old. The house he'd built to last forever had lasted exactly 15 years of family occupation. And now Candy was alone. Chapter 4, The Widow's Prison. After Aaron's death in 2006, Candy Spelling became the sole occupant of the manor. She was 61 years old. Her husband was dead. Her daughter wasn't speaking to her. Her son lived separately but visited occasionally. And she was alone in 56,500 square feet. The staff remained. She needed them to maintain the property. But staff aren't family. They're employees. You can't be vulnerable with employees. You can't grieve freely when housekeepers are polishing fixtures and chefs are preparing meals. Candy's response to grief and isolation was to double down on perfection. If the manor couldn't be a home, it would be the perfect museum. She oversaw constant maintenance, updates, redecorating. Every detail had to be flawless. She threw parties, fewer than before, but still regular social events. Charity galas. Holiday parties. Events where she could play the role of grand hostess in her grand house. But after the guests left, she was alone. Candy's isolation became legendary in Hollywood. She rarely left the manor. Social outings were rare. She had friends, but they came to her, she didn't go to them. The house had become her world. The only world she could control. The doll collection. One room in the manor is dedicated to Candy's doll collection. Over 400 dolls, meticulously maintained, displayed in custom cases with museum-quality lighting. The collection began as a hobby. But after Aaron's death, it became an obsession. Candy bought more dolls. Rare dolls. Expensive dolls. Antique dolls. She'd spend hours in the doll room, arranging and rearranging, cleaning, cataloging. Psychologically, dolls are fascinating. They're perfect, unchanging, controllable. Unlike real people, unlike her fractured family, dolls don't leave, don't criticize, don't die. The doll room became Candy's sanctuary. A place where everything was beautiful and nothing hurt. The Tori feud. Candy and Tori's relationship remained broken. They communicated primarily through lawyers and publicists. The conflict became public. Both Tori and Candy made statements to press. Both published memoirs with competing narratives. Candy's narrative: she'd given Tori everything. The best schools, every opportunity, a childhood of unimaginable privilege. Tori's rejection was inexplicable ingratitude. Tori's narrative: Candy had prioritized perfection over love. The house, the parties, the lifestyle, all performance. Tori had grown up emotionally neglected despite material wealth. Who was right? Probably both. Probably neither. What's clear is that the manor sat at the center of the conflict. It was the physical manifestation of everything Tori rejected and Candy defended. The house wasn't just a house. It was a symbol of their relationship: beautiful, expensive, empty, broken. Aaron's will. Aaron's will created more conflict. His estate was valued at $600 million. The manor alone was estimated at $150 million, market value in 2006. Aaron left most of his estate to Candy. The children, Tori and Randy, received relatively modest inheritances. Tori received $800,000. Randy received slightly more, but still a tiny fraction of the overall estate. Publicly, Aaron explained that his children were already financially independent. Tori had her own television career, Randy had a trust fund. The bulk went to Candy to ensure she could maintain the lifestyle to which she was accustomed. Privately, sources close to the family suggested Aaron wanted to ensure Candy could maintain the manor. The house cost over $1 million annually just in operating expenses: staff, utilities, maintenance, property taxes, insurance. Aaron knew that selling the manor would devastate Candy. It was her entire identity. So he left her the money to keep it. But this created resentment. Tori publicly discussed feeling hurt by her father's will. The media framed it as poor little rich girl, complaining about only getting $800,000. But it wasn't about the money. It was about what the will represented. Aaron had valued the house more than his relationship with his daughter. He'd ensured Candy could keep the monument. He'd given Tori just enough to stay quiet. The house had won. Candy's routine. For 13 years after Aaron's death, from 2006 to 2019, Candy lived at the manor, increasingly isolated. Her routine became rigid. Wake at 7 a.m. in her bedroom, sweet breakfast prepared by chef, eaten alone in the breakfast room, mornings spent in her office handling business. She managed Aaron's estate, oversaw his production company's remaining assets, lunch alone, afternoons spent in the doll room or overseeing staff, and maintenance dinner alone or occasionally with invited guests, evening in her private living room watching television, often Aaron's old shows. Bed by 10 p.m. Day after day. Week after week. Year after year. The staff changed over time. People quit, were replaced. But Candy remained. The constant presence in the ever-changing house. Friends tried to convince her to leave. To downsize. To buy a beautiful 5,000 square foot house that would be more manageable, more appropriate for a single person. Candy refused. "This is Aaron's legacy," she'd say. "I can't abandon it." But really, she couldn't abandon it because she didn't know how to be anyone except the woman who lives in the manor. Her entire adult identity was tied to this house. Without it, who was she? The decision to sell. By 2018, Candy was 73 years old. She'd lived at the manor for 27 years, 12 of them alone. She made a decision: it was time to go. Not because she wanted to. Because she had to. Financially, emotionally, physically, the manor was becoming impossible. The operating costs had increased. Property taxes alone were over $400,000 annually. Staff, maintenance, utilities, insurance. The house consumed money at an unsustainable rate. Candy was healthy but aging. Navigating 56,500 square feet was becoming difficult. She'd fallen twice, once on stairs, once in the hallway between rooms. She'd installed an elevator, but still, it was too much. And most importantly, she was lonely. Profoundly, destructively lonely. The house couldn't love her back. The staff couldn't replace family. The doll collection couldn't fill the void. In 2019, Candy listed the manor for sale. Asking price, $175 million. It was the end of an era. The house that Aaron built to last forever would pass to new owners after only 28 years of spelling family occupation. Chapter 5. The Sale That Nobody Wanted. When Candy Spelling listed the manor for sale in 2019, she was offering the most expensive residential property ever listed in Los Angeles County. $175 million. For comparison, that's more than most people in America will earn in 100 lifetimes. Combined. The real estate listing was extraordinary. Professional photography showcasing every room. Drone footage of the grounds. A promotional video narrated by a luxury real estate agent who spoke in hushed, reverent tones about one of the world's truly significant properties. The marketing emphasized Largest home in LA County, over 57,000 square feet. They'd added 500 square feet since original construction. 123 rooms of unparalleled luxury, suitable for head of state or captains of industry, a property of historic significance. But there was a problem. Nobody wanted it. The market reality. At $175 million, the manor could only be purchased by an extremely limited pool of buyers. In 2019, that meant tech billionaires, mostly based in Silicon Valley, not LA, international oligarchs and royalty hedge fund managers, entertainment moguls. But each of these potential buyer categories had issues with the manor. Tech billionaires prefer modern architecture, smart home technology, sustainability features. The manor is traditional, ostentatious, environmentally inefficient. It represents old wealth aesthetics that new money tech founders actively reject. International buyers face increasing scrutiny. Money laundering laws, foreign ownership restrictions, and political complications make purchasing ultra-expensive U.S. real estate difficult and risky. Hedge fund managers are largely based in New York or London. An LA mansion, however large, doesn't make practical sense. Entertainment moguls know better. They know the spelling family history. They know what the manor represents, excess that destroys rather than enables. They know that in Hollywood, the manor is legendary not for its luxury but for its dysfunction. The property sat on the market for months. No offers. Not even viewing appointments from serious buyers. Candy quietly reduced the price to $160 million. Still nothing. Then $150 million. A few inquiries. No offers. The problem wasn't just price. The problem was that the manor is fundamentally unsuitable as a residence. The operational reality. Buying the manor for $150 million is just the beginning. You also need annual operating costs of $3 to $5 million. Property taxes, $500,000 plus staff, minimum 15 to 20 full-time employees, $1.5-2 million utilities, $300,000 plus maintenance and repairs, $1 million plus insurance, $200,000 plus security, $500,000 plus. You need a household income of at least $20 million per year just to comfortably afford the manor's operating costs. And that assumes you don't renovate or update. The manor systems were installed in the 1990s. The HVAC, electrical, plumbing, all increasingly outdated and inefficient. A comprehensive modernization would cost tens of millions. The social reality. Owning the manor comes with social complications. In Los Angeles, there's a cultural shift happening. Conspicuous consumption is increasingly seen as gauche, tone-deaf, and socially irresponsible. The wealthy are downsizing, building eco-friendly compounds, emphasizing sustainability. The manor represents the opposite. It's maximum consumption. Maximum waste. Maximum, I have more than you. Celebrities who might have aspired to manor-level properties in the 1980s now prefer smaller, more private estates in Malibu or Hidden Hills. They want luxury, but they don't want to be seen as excessive. Owning the manor in 2019 would make you a target. For criticism. For protesters. For every think piece about wealth inequality and billionaire excess. Who wants that? The architectural reality. The manor is trapped between two eras. It's too old to be modern. The 1990s French chateau aesthetic is dated. The systems are inefficient. The layout doesn't reflect how wealthy people actually live in 2019. But it's too new to be historic. Unlike true historic estates, century-old properties with architectural significance, the manor has no heritage value. It was built in 1991. It's 28 years old. It's not old enough to be distinguished, just old enough to be outdated. And it can't be easily updated. The structure is so specific to Aaron Spelling's vision that any significant renovation would essentially mean gutting the interior and starting over. At that point, why not just tear it down and build new? But tearing down the manor would be controversial. It's famous. It's part of LA culture, however problematic. The backlash would be significant. So the manor sits in a strange limbo, too ostentatious for modern tastes, too dated to be current, too new to be historic, too famous to demolish. Who wants that problem? The offers that came. Eventually, a few offers materialized. Developer offer, $85 million to purchase, demolish, and subdivide the land into multiple smaller luxury lots. Candy rejected this. She couldn't bear the thought of Aaron's monument being destroyed. Private equity group, $100 million to convert the manor into an ultra-luxury hotel or event venue. Candy rejected this. Aaron built a home, not a hotel. Anonymous foreign buyer, $120 million, all cash, close within 30 days. This offer was promising, but it fell apart during due diligence when lawyers couldn't verify the source of funds. The manor sat. Price kept dropping. $140 million. $130 million. $125 million. For Candy, each price reduction was humiliating. Aaron's monument, the house that was supposed to prove the Spelling family's permanence, was being rejected by the market. Nobody wanted it. Finally, in July 2019, a legitimate offer came through, $119.75 million. Not the $175 million Candy had hoped for. Not even close. But a real offer from a real buyer with verified funds. The buyer was Petra Ecclestone, daughter of Formula One billionaire Bernie Ecclestone. Petra was 30 years old, recently divorced, with 3 children. She was looking for a Los Angeles base and had the resources to afford the manor's operation. Candy accepted. The sale closed in September 2019. After 28 years, the Spelling family relinquished the manor. Candy's departure. Candy's move out was emotional and complicated. She'd lived at the manor for nearly 3 decades. Every object, every room, every corner held memories, mostly of Aaron. She hired a moving company that specialized in high-value estates. It took 3 weeks to pack. Some estimates suggest the contents alone, furniture, art, collectibles, Candy's doll collection, were worth $30 to $40 million. Candy purchased a much smaller, by manor standards, penthouse in Century City. 15,000 square feet. Still enormous by normal standards, but barely a quarter of the manor's size. The last night Candy spent at the manor, she walked through the empty rooms. The furniture was gone. The art had been removed. It was just architecture, beautiful, cold, empty architecture. According to people close to her, Candy cried. Not just because she was leaving Aaron's monument, but because she realized something she'd always known but never admitted: the house had never been a home. Not really. It had been a performance. A stage set for a life that looked perfect but felt hollow. She left the manor the next morning and never returned. The financial reality. Let's talk numbers. Real numbers. Aaron paid $47 million to build the manor in 1991. Adjusted for inflation, that's approximately $100 million in 2019 dollars. Candy sold it for $119.75 million. On the surface, that's a $19.75 million profit. But factor in 28 years of property taxes, approximately $14 million total, 28 years of operating costs, approximately $70 to $100 million total, updates and renovations over 28 years, at least $20 million. The Spelling family spent roughly $100 to $134 million maintaining the manor for 28 years, then sold it for $120 million. In other words, the manor cost the family money. It was a money-losing investment that consumed resources for 3 decades and sold for less than the total amount invested. Aaron built it as a monument to success. Financially, it was a failure. Chapter 6: The New Owner's Curse. Petra Ecclestone purchased the manor in September 2019 for $119.75 million, the highest price ever paid for a Los Angeles residential property at that time. She moved in with her 3 young children, all under age 10, and household staff. Within 6 months, she regretted it. The early problems. Petra's first challenge was immediate: the manor was dated. Despite being only 28 years old, the aesthetics were stuck in the 1990s. Ornate. Formal. Heavy. Petra wanted modern. She hired interior designers and began renovation work. But renovating the manor proved nearly impossible. The structure is so specific to its original design that changing anything requires changing everything. You can't modernize one room, it clashes with adjoining spaces. You'd need to redo entire wings. Petra started work on the master bedroom suite. Cost estimates came in at $8 million just for that one space, gutting 1990s marble, installing new systems, modernizing the bathroom. She approved the work. Then discovered that renovating the master suite required updating electrical systems throughout that entire wing. Another $5 million. The project spiraled. What started as let's freshen up a few rooms became we need to spend $30 to $40 million modernizing major portions of the house. Petra paused the work. She'd already spent $120 million buying the house. Spending another $40 million to make it livable was absurd. So she lived in a partially renovated, mostly 1990s mansion that felt increasingly uncomfortable. The staff problem. Petra quickly learned what the Spellings had learned. The manor requires enormous staff. She initially hired 18 full-time employees. For housekeepers, 3 chefs, 1 for family meals, 1 for staff, 1 on call for events, for nannies, 1 for each child plus 1 supervisor, 3 groundskeepers, 2 maintenance workers, 1 house manager, 1 personal assistant to Petra. But even with 18 people, the house couldn't be properly maintained. There were always areas that needed cleaning, repairs that were pending, gardens that were overgrown. Petra increased staff to 25. Then 30. The annual payroll exceeded $2.5 million. And still, she never felt like the house was clean enough, maintained enough, running smoothly enough. Because the manor wasn't designed to be efficiently operated. It was designed to be impressive. Those are different goals. The loneliness problem. Petra was a single mother with 3 young children living in 56,500 square feet. The children had enormous bedrooms. Each child's suite was larger than most family apartments. They had a playroom, a craft room, a movie room, an indoor skating rink. But they were lonely. The house was too big. The children couldn't play freely. There were too many areas that were off-limits: formal rooms, Petra spaces, staff areas. They couldn't find each other easily. The house became isolating rather than liberating. Petra hired companions for her children, young women whose job was basically to play with the children and keep them company. She realized, horrifyingly, that her children needed paid friends because the house was too large for them to develop natural friendships. Petra herself struggled. She'd been photographed at social events, looking glamorous in front of the manor's impressive facade. But privately, she told friends she was miserable. The house was cold. Not temperature, emotional temperature. It wasn't designed for warmth or comfort. It was designed for display. Petra would spend evenings in her bedroom suite, essentially hiding from the rest of the house. She'd use the intercom to communicate with staff rather than walk to find them. She avoided entire wings of the house because they were too depressing, beautiful rooms that nobody used. The social problem. Petra tried to embrace the hosting responsibilities that came with the manor. She threw parties, charity events, holiday gatherings. The events were impressive. The manor can accommodate hundreds of guests. The motor court holds 100+ cars. The catering kitchens can produce food for elaborate dinners. But Petra hated it. Every event felt performative. She wasn't hosting friends, she was producing a show. Guests came to see the manor, not to spend time with her. After parties, guests would post on social media photos of the manor's opulence, videos of the grounds, comments about the excess. Some comments were admiring. Many were critical. Petra became a target for criticism about wealth inequality, billionaire excess, climate irresponsibility. The manor's carbon footprint is enormous. She was being judged for living in the house. But she'd bought the house to have privacy and security. Instead, she was more exposed than ever. The security problem. Ironically, despite being one of the most secure estates in Los Angeles, walls, gates, cameras, security staff, Petra never felt safe at the manor. The house is so large that someone could be inside without being detected. Multiple entrances. Complex layout. Wings that are rarely used. Petra had nightmares about intruders hiding in the unused rooms. She'd wake up at night, hearing sounds, the house settling, staff working, systems running, and feel terrified. She increased security. More cameras. More guards. Motion sensors throughout the property. But the security measures made her feel less safe, not more. She was living in a fortress. That means she needed a fortress. That means there was something to fear. The The manor was supposed to provide safety through isolation and resources. Instead, it created fear through scale and complexity. The COVID problem. In March 2020, COVID-19 hit. Los Angeles locked down. Petra was trapped in the manor with her children and staff. For most people, COVID lockdown meant being confined to apartments or houses. Difficult, but manageable. For Petra, lockdown meant being confined to 56,500 square feet. You'd think that would be easy, so much space. But it was psychologically torturous. The empty rooms felt even emptier. The unused spaces felt even more wasteful. The staff was essential. She couldn't operate the manor alone, but having 30 employees around during a pandemic was stressful. Petra couldn't leave. Couldn't escape. The house that was supposed to be a luxurious retreat became a prison. Her children struggled. Remote schooling in a mansion felt absurd. They had every material resource but none of the social interaction they needed. By summer 2020, Petra had made a decision. She couldn't stay at the manor. Less than 1 year after purchasing it for $120 million, she wanted out. The sale attempt. Petra quietly contacted real estate agents in late 2020. She wanted to sell the manor. But the pandemic had devastated the luxury real estate market. Nobody was buying $100+ million properties. Nobody was touring houses. The market was frozen. Petra was trapped. She couldn't sell at a reasonable price. But staying was unbearable. She made a compromise. She'd keep the manor for now, but wouldn't live there full-time. She purchased a smaller house in Brentwood, only 10,000 square feet, and moved there with her children. The manor became, what? Not a home. Not abandoned. Something in between. Petra kept minimal staff at the manor to maintain it. But the family rarely visited. The house sat, 90% empty, consuming resources, generating no value. In 2021, Petra tried again to sell. She listed the manor for $165 million. No offers. She reduced to $155 million. Then $145 million. As of 2024, the manor remains unsold. Petra still technically owns it. But she doesn't live there. She spent roughly $15 to $20 million maintaining a house she doesn't use while trying to find a buyer. She's learned what Candy Spelling learned, what Aaron Spelling should have known. The manor is a curse. It's beautiful. It's impressive. And it destroys everyone who tries to own it. Chapter 7. What psychologists say about extreme wealth housing. Dr. Rachel Sherman, a sociologist at the New School who studies extreme wealth, has researched megamansions like the manor. Her findings are disturbing. Houses over 30,000 square feet create measurable psychological harm to inhabitants. Spatial psychology. Humans evolved to live in defined, manageable spaces. Our brains are adapted for environments we can mentally map and navigate, roughly 2,000 to 5,000 square feet for a family home. When spaces exceed our cognitive mapping abilities, we experience what psychologists call environmental overwhelm. Anxiety from not knowing or remembering the full layout, disorientation from getting lost or confused about location, isolation from family members being too far apart to interact naturally, depression from unused spaces that create a sense of waste and emptiness. Dr. Sherman studied 50 families living in houses over 20,000 square feet. She found 78% reported feeling anxious or depressed about their home, 65% said family relationships were worse after moving to a large home, 82% said they used less than half their home's square footage regularly, 91% said their homes required more staff than they were comfortable employing. The manor, at 56,500 square feet, is at the extreme end. It's not just large, it's beyond the scale of human comfortable habitation. The staff paradox. Large houses require large staffs. But employing many people to maintain your home creates psychological problems. Loss of privacy. You're never truly alone. Staff are always present. You can't relax completely in your own home. Class consciousness. Living with employees creates constant awareness of inequality. You're reminded daily that you have wealth they don't. This creates guilt, discomfort, and social distance. Performance pressure. You must maintain the role of the employer at all times. You can't be vulnerable, can't show weakness, can't fully be yourself. Dependency. You become unable to perform basic tasks. Candy Spelling couldn't make her own breakfast. That might sound luxurious, but it's actually infantilizing. You lose basic life skills. Dr. Michael Cunningham, a psychologist who works with ultra-high net worth individuals, describes this as learned helplessness of the wealthy. When you have staff for every task, you lose agency. You stop doing things for yourself. This creates depression. Lack of agency and autonomy are major depressive risk factors. The isolation effect. Counterintuitively, larger houses create more isolation, not less. In a normal-sized home, family members interact by necessity. You share kitchens, living rooms, bathrooms. You cross paths constantly. Interaction happens organically. In megamansions, family members can live completely separate lives. They retreat to their own wings. They eat separately. They schedule time together rather than bumping into each other naturally. This is what happened to the Spellings. Tori described going days without seeing her father despite living in the same house. Dr. Sherman notes, "We see this pattern consistently. Large houses create physical distance that becomes emotional distance. Families fragment. Relationships suffer." The display pressure. Houses like the Manor aren't built for living, they're built for display. This creates constant performance pressure. Everything must be perfect. Guests must be impressed. You can't let the house become messy or casual because it's too beautiful, too expensive, too impressive for normal life. Dr. Lisa Miller, a clinical psychologist who treats wealthy clients, explains, living in a showplace home is like living on stage. You're always performing. Always aware that the space is designed to impress, not to comfort. This creates exhausting cognitive dissonance. The meaning crisis. Psychologically, humans need meaning, a sense that their lives matter, that their choices are significant. Extreme wealth can undermine meaning. When you have everything, nothing feels special. When you can buy anything, nothing has value. The Manor exemplifies this. It has everything: bowling alley, skating rink, screening room, gift wrapping room. But none of these things are used meaningfully. Aaron Spelling built it to create meaning, to prove his success. But the house actually emptied his life of meaning. He ended up isolated in one bedroom, the other 123 rooms serving no purpose. Dr. Sherman, we see this pattern in extreme wealth. People build these monuments thinking it will make life meaningful. But meaning comes from relationships, challenges, growth, things money can't buy. The monuments become empty shells. The children problem. Children raised in megamansions face specific developmental challenges. Entitlement. Growing up with extreme luxury creates unrealistic expectations about life. Isolation. As with the Spelling children, large houses isolate kids from siblings and parents. Social disconnection. It's hard to relate to peers when your home is wildly different from theirs. Identity confusion. Children struggle to develop their own identity when living in a monument to their parents' success. Tori Spelling struggles. Her rebellion against the family wealth, her choice to live modestly, her conflicted relationship with her mother, are textbook examples of these developmental issues. The addiction connection. Psychologists who work with ultra-wealthy clients note a correlation between megamansion living and substance abuse. The isolation, the lack of meaning, the performance pressure, all of these are risk factors for addiction. Randy Spelling's weight gain and depression, while not addiction per se, follow similar patterns, using self-destructive behaviors to cope with the psychological pressure of living in the Manor. Can it be fixed? Dr. Sherman's research suggests that once you've built or bought a megamansion, there's no good solution. You can't make it comfortable. The scale is fundamentally wrong for human habitation. No amount of interior design fixes that. You can't downsize within it. Closing off wings and living in a smaller section doesn't work psychologically. The unused spaces remain, generating guilt and waste. You can't sell easily. The market for $100+ million homes is tiny. You're likely to take a massive financial loss. You can't donate it. Who wants it? Museums don't want the operating costs. Cities don't want to maintain it. Non-profits can't afford it. You can't demolish it. The backlash would be severe. The waste would be enormous. And you still own the land with all its problems. The only real solution is to never build or buy these houses in the first place. But that advice comes too late for families like the Spellings. They're trapped by their own success. The monument they built to prove their worth became the thing that destroyed them. The Manor as cautionary tale. Psychologists increasingly point to the Manor as a perfect case study in the psychology of extreme wealth. It has everything money can buy. And it provided nothing that actually matters: family connection, happiness, peace, meaning. Aaron Spelling died isolated in a bedroom suite. Candy spent 13 years lonely in 56,500 square feet. Tori fled and never came back. Randy dissolved into depression. Petra lasted less than a year before psychological pressure forced her out. The house destroys everyone who tries to live in it. Not through supernatural curse, through simple psychological mechanics. It's too big, too isolating, too performative, too much. At what point does more become too much? Psychologists now have an answer: around 15,000 to 20,000 square feet for a family home. Beyond that, you're building monuments, not homes. The Manor is at 56,500 square feet. It's not 3 times too large. It's catastrophically, destructively, soul-crushingly too large. And everyone who lives there learns that lesson. Eventually. Chapter 8: The Neighbors Who Hated It. Holmby Hills is one of Los Angeles's most exclusive neighborhoods. Old money. Established families. Properties passed down through generations. And then Aaron Spelling built the Manor. The construction years, 1991 to 1996. The neighbors hated it from the beginning. 5 years of construction noise. Daily truck traffic, cement mixers, lumber deliveries, equipment. Hundreds of workers. Dust. Disruption. But more than the inconvenience, neighbors were horrified by what was rising on their quiet street, a house that dwarfed everything around it. Holmby Hills estates are large, typically 15,000 to 25,000 square feet. Impressive, but proportional. The Manor was going to be 56,500 square feet. More than twice the size of anything nearby. It was architecturally inappropriate. The French chateau style clashed with the neighborhood's mix of colonial revival, Spanish colonial, and contemporary designs. It was ostentatiously new money. Old money families in Holmby Hills valued discretion, understatement, old-world taste. The Manor was the opposite: loud, obvious, look-at-me wealth. Neighbors filed complaints with the city. They argued the construction violated height restrictions. The Manor's tallest points reached 65 feet, higher than zoning allowed, but Aaron's lawyers had secured variances. They argued it violated setback requirements. They argued it created traffic problems. They argued the construction was creating safety hazards. Every complaint was dismissed or settled with Aaron's money. He paid fines. Made donations to city council members' campaigns. Hired lobbyists. The neighbors learned a lesson: money wins. Aaron could build whatever he wanted. The architectural offense. Once completed, the Manor became an immediate landmark, but not in a good way. It's visible from multiple streets. The roofline dominates the skyline. It's impossible to ignore. Architectural critics were savage. One Los Angeles Times architecture writer called it the gaudiest expression of nouveau riche taste Los Angeles has produced since the golden age of Hollywood excess. Another critic described it as what happens when unlimited money meets unlimited insecurity. A house screaming, "Look how successful I am," to a neighborhood that finds such displays deeply vulgar. The Playboy Mansion sits nearby, a famous property, but one that's been there since the 1970s and has cultural historical significance. The Manor had no such cash. It was just new, big, and tasteless. The social snubbing. Old money Holmby Hills families socially ostracized the Spellings. Invitations to neighborhood events stopped coming. Social functions didn't include them. The unspoken message was clear: you don't belong here. This hurt Candy more than Aaron. Aaron was in Hollywood, he had his social world. But Candy wanted to be part of the Holmby Hills elite. She'd worked her way into Los Angeles society through charity work and hosting. She thought the Manor would solidify her status. Instead, it made her a pariah. The house was too much. Too obvious. Too Hollywood producer, rather than established family. Candy tried to compensate by hosting elaborate parties, inviting celebrities and socialites. She thought if she made the Manor the place to be seen, acceptance would follow. It didn't work. Celebrities came, they wanted to see the house. But the old money families stayed away. The manor became known for Hollywood parties, not for serious social standing. The property value problem. Here's an unexpected consequence. The manor negatively impacted property values in Holmby Hills. This seems counterintuitive. Shouldn't the most expensive house in the neighborhood raise values? No. Because the manor set a precedent that neighbors feared. If zoning allows 56,500 square foot houses, more developers might build megamansions. The character of the neighborhood, exclusive but tasteful, large but not garish, was threatened. Neighboring property owners watched nervously. If more manor-sized houses were built, Holmby Hills would transform from exclusive residential neighborhood to billionaire theme park. Ironically, the neighbors wanted their properties to be valuable, but not too valuable. They wanted exclusivity without excess. Several neighbors formed a homeowners association, unusual for Holmby Hills, which had traditionally operated on informal social agreements, specifically to lobby for stricter zoning restrictions. They succeeded. In 1998, Los Angeles updated zoning for Holmby Hills, making it nearly impossible to build anything the scale of the manor again. Aaron's house was grandfathered in, but future megamansions were effectively banned. The neighbors had won, too late to stop the manor, but in time to prevent more. The celebrity problem. The manor attracted unwanted attention to the neighborhood. Paparazzi. Stalkers. Tourists. People would drive through Holmby Hills specifically to see the manor. They'd park on the street, take photos, sometimes try to approach the gates. When celebrity events happened at the manor, the paparazzi presence was intense. Helicopters circling overhead. Photographers with long lenses stationed outside. This disturbed the peace that neighbors valued. Holmby Hills had always been quiet, private, protected. The manor made it a tourist destination and paparazzi target. Security became an issue. Neighbors had to increase their own security measures because of spillover attention from the manor. The infrastructure strain. The manor put unprecedented strain on neighborhood infrastructure. The electrical demand was enormous. The manor required as much power as a small hotel. The local grid had to be upgraded. Water usage was extreme. The landscaping alone used over 1 million gallons per year. During droughts, neighbors resented the manor's consumption. Traffic was constant, staff arriving and departing, delivery trucks, service vehicles, catering trucks for events. The quiet residential streets became busy. All of this was legal. Aaron had secured all necessary permits. But it violated the neighborhood's unwritten rules about proportionality and discretion. The death years. When Aaron died in 2006, some neighbors hoped the house would be sold and possibly demolished. They knew Candy couldn't maintain it forever. But Candy stayed. For 13 years. During those years, the manor's presence became almost ghostly. Lights on but nobody home. Candy was there, but the house was so large and she so reclusive that it appeared empty. The parties stopped. The celebrity events ended. The manor became a monument that nobody entered except staff. Neighbors found this even more offensive than the active years. At least when the Spellings hosted parties, the house served a purpose. Now it sat, consuming resources, serving no function. A $150 million property operating as a one-person residence with a staff of 25. The inefficiency was obscene. The sale relief. When Candy sold to Petra in 2019, neighbors were cautiously optimistic. Maybe Petra would be less ostentatious. Maybe she'd scale down operations. Maybe she'd eventually demolish and subdivide. But Petra proved to be equally problematic. She attempted renovations that created construction noise again. She threw parties. She attracted paparazzi attention. Petra is a celebrity in her own right as Bernie Ecclestone's daughter. And then Petra essentially abandoned the house while still owning it. So once again, the manor sits, mostly empty, maintained by staff, serving no real purpose. Neighbors have given up hoping for change. The manor is permanent, until someone eventually demolishes it, which may never happen. It's become a landmark despite everyone's wishes otherwise. Tour buses include it on celebrity home routes. It appears in movies and TV shows as an establishing shot for extreme wealth. It's photographed constantly. The neighbors who fought its construction in the 1990s were right. The manor changed Holmby Hills permanently, and not for the better. It's a monument to excess in a neighborhood that valued discretion. And there's no undoing it. Chapter 9. The Staff Who Kept Its Secrets. Between 1996 and 2024, over 300 people have worked as staff at the manor. Housekeepers, chefs, gardeners, nannies, security guards, personal assistants, maintenance workers. Most signed non-disclosure agreements. But some have talked, off the record, anonymously, to reporters and researchers. Their stories reveal what really happened inside the manor. The daily reality behind the glamorous facade. The hierarchy. Staff at the manor operated under a rigid hierarchy. Tier 1, family-facing staff. Personal assistants to errand/candy private chef for family meals, head housekeeper, nannies, when children were young. These employees interacted directly with the family. They were trusted, well-paid, relatively, and had some autonomy. Tier 2, skilled staff. Additional chef, senior housekeeping staff, head gardener, security, supervisor, house manager. These employees ran operations but had limited family interaction. They managed Tier 3 staff. Tier 3, service staff. Housekeepers, gardeners, kitchen assistants, laundry staff, maintenance workers. These employees did the physical work. They were lowest paid, had least job security, and were often immigrants with limited English. The rules. Working at the manor required following strict rules. 1. Invisibility. Staff were expected to be invisible to the family. If you encountered a family member, you stopped what you were doing and turned toward the wall until they passed. You didn't make eye contact. You didn't speak unless spoken to. 2. Silence. Staff weren't permitted to socialize while working. No conversations in hallways or rooms where they might be overheard. Break times only. 3. Appearance. Uniforms were required and had to be immaculate. Hair neat. No visible tattoos or piercings. You represented the manor at all times. 4. Discretion. Anything you saw or heard was confidential. NDAs were enforced. Violations meant immediate termination and potential legal action. 5. Perfection. Everything had to be perfect at all times. Candy was known for white glove inspections, literally running her finger along surfaces to check for dust. One speck meant criticism or termination. The reality. Former staff described the manor as the hardest place I ever worked. Not because the work was physically demanding, though it was, but because the standards were impossible and the environment was psychologically oppressive. Maria's story, housekeeper, 1998 to 2004. I was assigned to the second floor, 30 rooms. Every day, I cleaned all 30 rooms whether they were used or not. Most were never used. I'd clean a bathroom and come back the next day and clean it again. It was spotless. Nobody had entered it. But Mrs. Spelling wanted it cleaned daily anyway. The isolation was hard. I'd work all day and maybe see one other person. The house was so big you could work an entire shift and never encounter another staff member. Mrs. Spelling was particular. She'd notice one pillow slightly crooked, one towel folded wrong. She never raised her voice, but she'd call the house manager, and you'd get called to the office and reprimanded. I lasted 6 years. Most housekeepers lasted 6 months. James's story, chef, 2001 to 2007. I was hired to cook family meals. But Mr. and Mrs. Spelling ate different meals at different times in different rooms. The children, Tori and Randy, had their own preferences and ate separately when they visited. I'd prepare 4 different meals for 4 different people in 4 different locations. And it had to be perfect. And they rarely ate what I made. Mrs. Spelling would take 2 bites and send it back. Not because it was bad, she just wasn't hungry. The waste was obscene. I'd prepare elaborate meals that would get scraped into the garbage. Every single day. Mr. Spelling was easier. He ate simply, chicken, fish, vegetables. He was kind to staff. He'd say please and thank you, which sounds basic but was rare in that house. After he died, it got worse. Mrs. Spelling ate alone in her room. I'd prepare a meal, send it up, and it would come back mostly uneaten. She was lonely and it manifested as loss of appetite. I left in 2007. I couldn't watch the waste and loneliness anymore. David's story, gardener, 2010 to 2015. The gardens at the manor are stunning. 6 acres. Formal French-style gardens, rose gardens, topiary, lawns, fountains. We had a team of 8 full-time gardeners. We worked 6 days a week maintaining everything. And nobody saw it. Mrs. Spelling rarely went into the gardens. No parties. No events. Just us maintaining perfection for nobody. The waste bothered me. The water use was enormous. We'd irrigate daily. During the drought years, 2012 to 2015, we were using over 1 million gallons per year. People in LA were being asked to cut water use, and we were watering gardens nobody walked through. I raised concerns with the head gardener. He told me to mind my business or quit. I stayed because I needed the job, but I hated what it represented. The turnover rate. Staff turnover at the Manor was extraordinarily high, over 60% per year. People quit because the work was isolating and depressing. The standards were impossible to maintain. The wages, while above average, weren't worth the stress. Working in a house where one lonely woman lived in 56,500 square feet felt morally wrong. The favorites. A few staff became long-term employees. These were typically people who'd worked for wealthy families before and understood the unwritten rules of high-end domestic service. One housekeeper worked for Candy for 20 years. A personal assistant stayed 15 years. These employees were loyal, discreet, and became almost part of the family, as much as staff can be. Candy relied heavily on these long-term employees. After Erin died, they were her primary social contact. She talked to them about her day, her feelings, her frustrations with Tori. One former personal assistant described Candy as heartbreakingly lonely. She'd try to have conversations with staff, but we couldn't respond naturally because we were employees. So she'd talk and we'd listen, and it was this sad one-way relationship. The secrets. Staff witnessed everything. The family conflicts, arguments between Candy and Tori, Randy's depression, Erin's declining health, all happening in different wings of the house, with staff as silent witnesses. The waste, food thrown away, entire rooms that were decorated, cleaned daily, and never used, clothing purchased and never worn, the sheer excess of everything, the loneliness, especially after Erin died, Candy wandering the house at night, unable to sleep, walking empty hallways, the desperation, Petra's children crying because they were lonely despite living in a mansion, Petra herself having panic attacks in the master bedroom. But staff couldn't talk about any of it. NDAs prevented disclosure. Professional ethics required discretion. And honestly, who would believe them? The public image of the Manor was opulence and success. The private reality was isolation, waste, dysfunction, and sadness. The current staff. As of 2024, the Manor employs approximately 15 staff maintaining the property even though Petra doesn't live there. They maintain gardens nobody sees. Clean rooms nobody uses. Run systems for an empty house. It's employment, yes. But it's employment maintaining a monument to excess that serves no purpose. One current staff member, speaking anonymously, said, "It's the easiest job I've had. The owner isn't there, so there's no pressure. But it's also the most depressing. We're maintaining a museum that nobody visits. What's the point?" The staff who work at the Manor, past and present, are the forgotten people in this story. They made the fantasy possible. They maintained the perfection. They served the family. And they watched the family be destroyed by the very luxury they were maintaining. They know the truth. The Manor isn't a dream home. It's a nightmare. And they're the ones who have to clean it up. Conclusion: the monument that became a mausoleum. Stand at the gates of the Manor on Mapleton Drive. Look through the iron gates at the limestone facade, the mansard roofs, the perfectly manicured grounds. It's beautiful. Undeniably, overwhelmingly beautiful. And it's empty. Functionally, purposefully, tragically empty. Erin Spelling built the Manor to be his monument. Proof that a poor kid from Dallas could create something that would last centuries. Something that announced, "I won." He spent $47 million building it. He lived there 10 years before dying in isolation. Candy lived there 28 years, 13 of them alone, increasingly isolated and estranged from her children. Petra purchased it for $120 million and fled within a year, unable to bear the psychological weight. The house didn't preserve the Spelling family. It destroyed them. The manor represents the endpoint of the American dream, the moment when more becomes too much. When accumulation becomes self-defeating. When the monuments we build to prove our worth become the prisons that contain us. Aaron thought size equaled significance. 56,500 square feet would mean his success was undeniable. But significance doesn't come from square footage. It comes from relationships, meaning, connection, all things the manor made impossible. The house is too large for human habitation. Psychologists have documented this. The Spelling family lived it. Petra learned it. Future owners will discover it. You cannot live happily in 123 rooms. The scale defeats the purpose of a home, which is to provide shelter, comfort, and a place for relationships to flourish. The manor provides spectacle instead. And spectacle is exhausting to maintain and empty to inhabit. What's fascinating is that everyone involved knew this on some level. Aaron must have known. He was a television producer. He understood that sets are fake, that what looks good on camera feels hollow in person. But he built it anyway, driven by a compulsion to prove something that couldn't be proven through architecture. Candy knew. She lived there 28 years and admitted in interviews that it was too much. But she stayed, unable to let go of the monument to her marriage and her life's work. Petra knew from the beginning. She's been wealthy her entire life. She understood what extreme houses mean. But she bought it anyway, perhaps thinking she could make it work through force of will. None of them could make it work. Because the manor wasn't designed to work as a home. It was designed to be impressive. And impressive and livable are often opposites. The manor will outlive everyone who tried to live in it. The structure is solid. The materials are high quality. It could stand for centuries. But it will never be a home. It will always be a monument, to ego, to excess, to the American belief that enough money can buy anything, even happiness. It can't. The manor proved this definitively. You can buy 56,500 square feet. You can buy French limestone and platinum fixtures and gardens requiring 8 full-time gardeners. You can buy staff and security and every conceivable amenity. But you can't buy family connection. You can't buy psychological comfort. You can't buy the sense that you're living rather than performing. The manor remains unsold as of 2024. Petra is asking $145 million. No serious offers. Who wants it? Who could possibly look at the history of this house, the broken family, the isolation, the waste, the depression, and think, yes, I want to live there? Someone will, eventually. Wealth concentrates. Mega-billionaires exist who could afford the manor's purchase and operation without significant financial stress. But whoever buys it next will learn what all previous owners learned. Some houses are too big to be homes. Some monuments are too heavy to live inside. The manor is beautiful. The manor is impressive. The manor is a testament to architectural ambition and construction skill. And the manor is cursed. Not by supernatural forces, by simple mathematics. 56,500 square feet divided by human need equals isolation. Multiplied by cost equals waste. Divided by staff equals loss of privacy and autonomy. The equation never works out. The house always wins. Aaron Spelling died in one bedroom of his 123-room house, isolated from the family he built the house to impress. That's the truth of the manor. All that space, all that luxury, and you die alone anyway. Candy spent 13 years rattling around in emptiness, surrounded by perfection that nobody saw. That's the truth of the manor. Beauty without audience is just waste. Petra fled after 1 year, choosing a 10,000 square foot house over 56,500 square feet. That's the truth of the manor. Less is genuinely more when it comes to human habitation. The house will stand. Long after everyone who built it or owned it or worked in it is dead, the manor will stand. A monument to the American dream's dark side. To the moment when success becomes excess. When accomplishment becomes isolation. When winning becomes losing. Future generations will visit, if it becomes a museum, which seems likely eventually. They'll walk through the bowling alley nobody bowled in. The skating rink nobody skated in. The gift wrapping room that wrapped the family's dysfunction in expensive paper. And they'll ask, how could anyone think this was a good idea? The answer is, they didn't think. They felt. They felt fear, of poverty, of insignificance, of being forgotten. They felt ambition, to prove themselves, to exceed all others, to win. And they built a monument to those feelings. A monument that became a mausoleum for the family it was supposed to protect. The Manor is America's most mysterious billionaire mansion, not because we don't know its history, but because we can't comprehend it. We can't understand how anyone could build 56,500 square feet and think it would bring happiness. But they did. They built it. They tried to live in it. And it destroyed them. The house stands as a warning. Some dreams are too big to inhabit. Some ambitions are too large to sustain. Some monuments are too heavy to live under. The Manor will be standing long after everyone reading this is dead. Beautiful. Empty. Waiting for the next person who thinks they can make it work. They can't. Nobody can. Because the house isn't designed for living. It's designed for dying, slowly, expensively, in isolation, surrounded by luxury that provides no comfort. That's the dark story of Spelling Manor. Not a haunting. Not a curse. Just the simple, terrible truth that sometimes, the dream you chase becomes the nightmare you can't escape. And sometimes, the monument you build to yourself becomes the tomb you're buried in. Welcome to the Manor. Population, 0. That's how it started. That's how it is. And that's how it will remain. Forever. The end. If you enjoyed this investigation into Spelling Manor and the dark truth behind America's most mysterious billionaire mansion, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments which mansion we should explore next. Your support makes these detailed stories possible. Thank you for watching. And remember, if you ever have the chance to buy a 56,500 square foot house, don't. The Spellings did it for you. Learn from their mistake.